Welcome back to the Art Inside the Craft podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Glazier, and this is episode number 29. I actually became aware of my next guest talent through his work with Allman Betts, and the first time I got to see my guest, Johnny Stachela, on stage was at the historic Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, which Johnny has an interesting connection to. I wanted to ask about his musical roots, where he grew up, and how he ended up making the musical connection with Allman Betts. We also discuss how he approaches his guitar playing in a band like the Allman Betts Band, where you have not only three talented guitar players, but a group of musicians that are all phenomenal in their own space. Listen in on that interview now with Johnny Stachela. Like I said, so I caught you for the first time at the Surf Ballroom, and just, watching you and Dwayne go back and forth was really incredible. And so I just kind of became a huge fan ever since then, which is why I wanted to talk to you today.
Yeah, was that back when it was still the Devin Allman project?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
I remember that gig because that's the was the Surf Ballroom that's where the winter winter party thing happened and Richie Valens and all that stuff, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly.
I totally remember that gig, and it was special. I remember it because first time playing in Iowa. My grandfather was from Iowa.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
I just had like a spirit that day. I really remember that. Like a lot of shows, kind of like I'm like, yeah, I don't really remember that one, but that one I really have vivid memories of. So I was doing.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, it's a special venue for sure. So
yeah, that, and I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in California, right, Los Angeles, which is an interesting place to grow up for music. But Richie Valens was, that whole story with the plane crash and how he came out of the valley and stuff was something I was exposed to like really early on. I was really young.
Wow.
My dad was at that school when that happened.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And when I got my first guitar, I remember La Bamba, that the riff to La Bamba was like one of the very first things I ever learned. It was like that and Black Sabbath.
That's cool.
Yeah. So anyways, being at the Surf Ballroom, it brought up a lot of like things for me, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool link in P to your history.
Yeah.
So going to speaking of where you grew up, what kind of stuff were you listening to back, I guess, really getting interested in music?
Well, early on it was hard rock, I think that it was, very young, like when I was 5-6 years old, I was really into like AC/DC and Van Halen and of course Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. Actually, they came a little bit later. AC/DC and Van Halen were probably the first two bands I was really diving into. Like very young. Like I remember when Back in Black came out and I was probably 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's all because of my dad. He had he was a record collector. He still is, collects music, and that's just the stuff he was listening to, and that's what I liked.
Yeah, same thing with me. My dad, we grew up with records around the house too, so you kind of pick up whatever they're, I guess, listening to and get the bug from there.
Yeah. And it evolves, and you get your own taste out of it, I guess, as you get older. And then now we almost can't agree on anything when it comes to music.
That's funny.
so there you go.
Yeah. So how long before, once you kind of got that bug for listening to, deeply listening to music, how long before you actually picked up a guitar or an instrument?
Well, I started listening to music and getting excited about it. I was really young, 5-6 years old, and we had toy guitars around the house, and I always kind of wanted one, but I was 12 years old when my parents got me my first electric guitar. And at that point, I remember it was like I just kind of knew, I'm like, this is really what I want to do. I want to play guitar. And it took a few months of talking about it, getting to the point where they were able to get me a guitar and stuff like that. So that was kind of the turning point. And once I got it, there was no stopping. I just dove right in. So yeah. And
were you did you kind of hop around in some different bands around there?
Yeah, tons. We started out playing in my parents' garage. The garage was separate from the house in the backyard, and we kind of put our gear out there and my brother, I have a younger brother, who's 2 years younger, and we had like a drum set and some big, Marshall amps and whatever Fender amps and stuff. And we used to jam, and then people from school would come over and we'd kind of jam with them. And that's kind of how it really started, playing music. And then eventually we're like, well, we're sounding pretty good here. We need to get a gig. So then that was kind of the next step,
Yeah. And were there a ton of like spots you could play around the area you lived in?
There were. A lot has changed. I still live. I'm in Santa Monica now, not too far from where I grew up, really. A lot of the venues I grew up playing are gone.
Oh.
At the time, there were a ton, and there was the whole Sunset Strip was really happening. And a lot of those places are still there. The vibe's not quite like it was back then. And some of them are gone, like the Coconut Teaser and some of these like they were, historic to me. That's where I grew up, and
Sure.
places we wanted to play, and they're not there anymore. But yeah, we just started calling around. I had hooked up with some friends from high school, and we started calling around and basically just taking wherever gig we could get. We didn't really start. At first, we were playing like at school functions.
Oh yeah.
And then you get your car and you have the ability to kind of get around. It wasn't until I would probably say it was probably senior in high school or shortly after graduation when we started playing clubs around town, and not all of them would let us play because a lot of them were 21 and up, and we were only like 17 or 18 years old. So,
yeah.
So you kind of took, we were playing at coffee shops, like full band, electric. We'd kind of do whatever we could do, If they said yes, we'd go play.
Cool.
Yeah.
And were you at that point were you playing slide, or was it just kind of standard guitar stuff, or?
At that point, my tastes were definitely starting to change quite a bit from where I was when I started playing guitar. I was always interested in blues music, but I had gotten deeper into bands like Leonard Skinner, and my girlfriend in high school loved the Grateful Dead, so that kind of got me into the Grateful Dead. And then I found the Allman Brothers, which kind of bridged the gap for me between Leonard Skinner and Grateful Dead, and that became my favorite band.
Cool.
And it was around that time that I started picking up slide a little bit, but it was kind of a novelty. I think a lot of people look at it that way, at least, I looked at it as like, oh, this is something else you could do in addition to, like using maybe an effects pedal or just getting a different color, a different sound. And I learned like a song basically, and we could play slide on one song, and then that slowly evolved where with slide guitar, I would start to go to these like blues jams around town. And, there's a ton of great guitar players out there.
Yeah.
And when you're on this long list and you're waiting to get on stage, and then you're on stage and there's, 3 other people have already taken guitar solos and they've kind of just, rip the roof off. Like, what are you going to do that's different? So I would pull out the slide. It was just something different,
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always interesting. Like, I'm 46. And so like when I grew up, there was, it was all hair metal and heavy metal. So there wasn't slide anywhere. And so I kind of came to the same path you did. You find the Allman Brothers and you find other people kind of doing cool stuff. That Izzy Stradlin album.
Juju Hounds, man.
Yeah, and the
so
Juju
good.
Hounds. That was so much cool stuff on there. And, then you go that way and you just find other bands doing that kind of music. And it's the good stuff's out there. You just got to weed through all the pop radio to get to it.
Yeah, there's a path to it, you start getting in it. Like, for example, I was into like Leonard Skinner, right? And I like their guitar playing. There's some slide playing in that, which was kind of like turning my ear a little bit. But at the same time, I liked, at that time I liked Ozzy, and Zakk Wylde was kind of new, and then he had his band Pride and Glory, and they were kind of that kind of stuff. And it was kind of like slow. It's a slow process where it starts bridging the gap, and all of that listening led me to players like Warren Haynes or Derek Trucks and stuff. And and then you start, going backwards and really diving into the source of it. And, whether it's Dwayne Allman and Dickie Betts and then going back to their influences. I kind of went backwards
Mm-hmm.
after I kind of, found what I really liked. I started going backwards until you're all the way into the Mississippi Delta, listening to kind of where it all comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, same thing with me. It kind of seems like that's how it goes. If you really dig deep into the music, you find the stuff you like, and then you go, well, where did they get it from? And you just, yeah.
Exactly.
It seems like it always ends up in the Mississippi Delta. I don't know why. That's where it
Well,
goes.
yeah, I mean,
or Chicago,
yeah,
or.
yeah. I mean, American music, everything's born out of the blues and jazz, and country music and these like it's really a traditional heritage kind of thing that nobody invents really I mean, there are very innovative artists, but like music is something that I think is constantly evolving, and it comes from a place and it's just evolving over time. But blues for me is the basis of most of the music that I love,
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you on that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like we were saying earlier, the first time I saw you guys was at the Surf. How did you and we're kind of skipping ahead a little bit through
Sure.
your career, I guess, but how did you and Dwayne end up hooking up and starting to play together?
We'd had met and played a few times over the years in LA, just kind of doing gigs and stuff like that.
Mm.
And we knew each other. And when things really started to come together, he was living in Florida for a little while because he kind of bounced back and forth between Florida. His dad lives in Florida and his mom lives in Los Angeles. So he kind of bounced back and forth, and he came back to LA and was kind of, really getting his stuff together. And a mutual friend of ours, a band in Malibu, was playing a gig, and they invited both of us down to sit in.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. So we ended up on stage together, and it was pretty electric, and the chemistry was pretty apparent and immediate. And, we just kind of kept in touch, and then that led to the next gig and to the next one. And we just kind of were always, crossing paths and playing together. And and we just started to become really good friends over the years.
And so just for listeners who may not, be quite familiar with what you guys are doing, you guys are all now in the Allman Betts Band. And like I said, I've seen you guys 2 or 3 times, I think. And it's really cool to have, some of the original 6 Allman Brother Band, kids in this group to kind of keep that tradition going. And and just so people know, there's you guys got 3 guitar players in the band, and for that sound, it really makes a lot of sense and is really cool vibe when you guys are all playing. How do you work out like different parts in the songs? Is it just kind of natural the way it happens, or do you guys kind of specifically go, well, Devin's gonna play this part and kind of lead the way, and we're gonna take different spots, or
yeah, well, that's an interesting question. We don't really work out our parts together a whole lot. Usually the way the songs come together, it's usually presented to us by Devin and Dwayne, or by one of Devin or Dwayne, whatever, depending on what the song is, and we just kind of work the song up as a band. What I do as a guitar player in the band, and is I listen to everything that's going on, and I create a part that is, sits in a different sonic space than what everybody else is doing. A lot of times I find myself sitting in the same sonic space as John Ginty, our B3 player. Yeah. So, because when they write the songs, it's a riff and a melody, right?
Yeah.
And that's cool. I might have a counter riff that I come up with, that play off of their riff, or I might play something similar to their riff on a different octave on the guitar, which just has a different. I just try to create something. Basically, whatever they're doing, I go the opposite direction and do something a little different. That's kind of the way it works. We don't really work it out. With some of the harmony stuff, the more intricate harmony stuff, like a song like Savannah's Dream, or even Autumn Breeze, you've probably heard us play that. Dwayne and I will sit down and kind of, play the melody and play the harmony together, and just kind of, we'll sit down with a couple acoustic guitars and work it up. pretty quickly usually, and that's just the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it really it's sometimes it seems like when there's that many guitar players you could, end up with a lot of noise, but when you guys are playing it's just like seamlessly perfect and yeah, like you said everybody just kind of picks a different spot and it just sounds great. So I'm
Yeah.
always interested in the workings behind it even though it's, so on the spot kind of inspiration, but it's kind of cool to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody in the band has their strengths, and I think we all, it's kind of obvious to us, like who should take what, like a certain song, there's never like a conversation really. It's just kind of like this song really needs a slide solo, or this song
Mm,
really is in Devin's wheelhouse, like let's let him run with it on this one, or this song really has this great improvisational moment that Dwayne's really, something he excels at doing. So a lot of times the songs just kind of dictate who's going to play what. And I think being a guitar player in a band with three guitar players, it's important to know when not to play.
yep.
That's equally as important. It's the space you leave. There's times when I just won't play at all, because I want to let the music breathe on stage. Like you have to get your ego completely out of the mix if you're going to make, good music, because it's easy to just want to play all the time,
Right.
but you're really trying to serve the song. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I like I had told you, I interviewed Scott Sherrard not long ago, and
Yeah.
and I had told him that it was really funny to for me as a guitar player, I'm over hyper vigilant and watching the guitar players, and I
Yeah.
told him it was funny, like sometimes he would just literally step back and just kind of put his hands on the top of the guitar and just sit
Me
there
too.
for like
Yeah.
half a song. And
Sure.
so I really, kind of commended him because it would be easy, like you're saying, to get your ego involved and want to play over everything. But sometimes you just sit back, you let the song breathe, and it's just perfect. It's beautiful. It's always fun to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, you got to pick your moments. You don't want to, it's like a conversation we're having right now. I don't want to talk over you while you're explaining that to me. you
Right.
know, there's a time to listen, there's a time to kind of pull back. And I think listening is the key. It's knowing when and when not to play. It's also knowing what to play, how to play it, playing music is very much, it's a language, so it's like having a conversation.
Kind of another cool thing that I enjoy about watching you guys play is it seems like you pull from almost everywhere. So
Hmm.
like just kind of as a fan on the outside, it seems like Devin kind of digs like that 70s, 80s rock and roll,
Totally.
Prince, Tom Petty type stuff. And then you've
Yep.
got like Dwayne that's been steeped in Southern, well, whatever you want to call it, Southern rock, Southern music.
Yep.
And then, of course, you guys have made your own music, created your own album. And so how do you like go through the process of picking which songs you're going to play in a set? Do you just kind of pick them out of a hat?
No, Devin writes the set list and usually runs it by Dwayne, and he may have a couple tweaks here and there. And then Dwayne might run it by me to see if I think it's, if there's anything missing, or if we're, should maybe change an order or something, if he has a question. But it's a pretty quick process. And frankly, I kind of like not being too involved with the set lists.
Mm,
The band, especially on this last run, it's getting really exciting because we're getting to a point now where the body of work is getting larger, and we're able to really mix up the set list from night to night.
yeah.
It's really fun to go play a whole new set of songs the very next night, only repeat maybe 3 or 4 songs or none or whatever. And so it's a little bit, that's a little bit more celebrated in kind of like the jam band world,
Hmm.
where you kind of create these unique set lists. And I've really been enjoying that. And it's the set list approach is kind of similar to the song approach. It's just kind of, having everybody has like their moment kind of thing, and just knowing when to pick your spots. And I think as long as everybody feels like, they're getting to play, and the set list flows and the energy's in the right place, that we just run with it. And then they just change it on stage if it's not. So
Yeah.
Devin's got a really great ability to kind of read the room, and he may write a set list, and we might completely take a left turn the third or fourth song in, and his instinct is really good when it comes to that stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's really great that you guys are all fantastic musicians and pull that kind of stuff off. So it's nice to be able to go, well, maybe we got to throw these songs in for tonight, and that's cool. And so that's kind of all I've got. I just got a couple other quick questions.
Sure.
These are just kind of generic ones. What is your favorite venue to play?
Well, that's an interesting question. There's a couple. It's funny because my favorite venues to play are usually the ones that are the highest, that have the most pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Also, because they're your favorite, right?
Sure.
So, I'm very much looking forward to playing at Red Rocks. Did that once before, and that's just a magical spot. I mean, outdoors. And last time that I played there is with the Devin Allman Project, and Dwayne and I were the guests at the time. There was a lightning storm, and the set got cut short, and I ended up, I think, playing only 1.5 songs or something.
Oh, wow.
But it was still amazing to be at Red Rocks, and I'm very much looking forward to going back playing there. And in addition to that, I always play, the Beacon Theater in New York City.
Sure.
Just because of the history of the Allman Brothers and what they've done there, and what a great room it is, and the audience there is just electric. So it's that's always been really, really fun. You really rise to the occasion when you're in those kind of moments.
Yeah, right. And then the only other question I have is, what is your favorite? I know you've got a ton of guitars. What's your favorite guitar when you're just kind of kicking around the house and noodling around?
I'm mostly just I have a Gibson SG that I've named Stormy. And it's I think it was made in 2000. It's like a custom shop kind of gift. I bought it used later on, like around 2007 or so. And I only really have a couple guitars. I only travel with one at a time, usually a Les Paul or an SG. And thankfully I haven't broken any strings. So if I do, there's plenty of guitars on the road with us, so I'll just grab. Actually, I did. You know what? I have a great story. I did have a problem with a guitar. I think it was my SG. We were in Macon. I don't remember what it was. I think it was I had a problem with the. It wasn't a broken string, but I think one of the pickups cut out, like the switch broke or something when we were on stage, and I freaked out. And our tech ran over and handed me Dwayne Allman's Gold Top, the 57, as the backup.
Oh, wow.
And we were planning to bring it out later in the set, and that ended up being the guitar I ended up playing until they fixed my guitar. So that was a pretty good backup.
Oh,
so
wow.
I got lucky on that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of kick around those two guitars, and around the house it's the same thing. I play those guitars, and 99% of the time around the house I don't even plug them in. I just play practice unplug like that. I think it's a good, well, one, we have a really small space, so I'm trying to keep quiet. Yeah. And other than that, it's also a great way to practice. If you can make a guitar sound good without any amplifier or tricks or anything, then when you plug in, it's definitely going to sound good. So
a tremendous thanks to Johnny for the interview and fun conversation. I recorded this interview just before Johnny got back to Red Rocks in 2021, and he's been touring pretty much nonstop since then. Johnny's slide work and his dedication to his instrument places him firmly beside his contemporaries like Derek Trucks, Luther Dickens, or J.D. Simo, and future generations of players will definitely include his name next to those like Raghuter, Dwayne Allman, and Elmore James. You can visit his link tree in the podcast description to pick up a shirt or subscribe to his mailing list. Follow along on his Instagram also, where he keeps fans up to date with where he'll be playing next. A tremendous thank you to my sponsor, Ink19.com and Black Cat Bone Productions for their continued support, and I'll catch you all down the road.